Hello, everyone. Sometimes when you're down the pub and you're bored, you could end up chatting about politics. Well, welcome to our world here on Down the Pub, where we'll be chatting about politics for the next hour, and we will be coming back to you regularly with the same vibe. I'm Peter Simpson, the host of the Haryan Gláeddyv channel, and have run this channel for 8 years with a good core audience and with 10,000 subs. And I'm here with my guest, Patrick Timms, who is the editor of the Wolves of Westminster, an independent journalist who has broken stories that have made a difference in the world of Westminster. Links to that will be below. So, hello, Patrick.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. So yeah, I suppose we'll start off with explaining why we decided to start the podcast. Basically, we got in contact with each other through DMs and things like that. Started speaking to each other as well. Found that we got on very well. Talked about different things like politics, and yeah, had a bit of a pubby vibe between us where we just enjoyed shooting the breeze, really. And well, we thought it was good enough to record, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah. So we've got some conversations to be having at the moment this week, haven't we? After everything that's happened in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with God, you've got what? Trump visit, obviously the disaster with tragedy, I should say, unfortunately, with Charlie Kirk as well. That's been all over the news as well. Reform conference was big reshuffle that everyone forgets about. Mandy going, Raina going as well. It feels like they came out of nowhere, really. But I suppose when it rains, it pours. So, I suppose, yeah.
If you'd like some insider info on that one, so I was at the Reform conference. I was in the room when Nigel Farage was speaking, because we're accredited press with Reform, and hopefully we'll stay that way. But so they were planning for Nigel to speak at 4 p.m. on that Friday, right? They moved the speech forward from 4 p.m. to 1 p.m. Now you can tell that somebody in the back room has been tasked with very hastily redacting that speech. But interestingly, what Nigel actually said was, oh, well, Angela Rayner, he's referring to, oh, well, she was the housing secretary for, until half an hour ago. But then she had to go because she, claimed £40,000 in council tax, right?
Yeah.
The trouble being, it wasn't council tax; it was stamp duty. So this tells us, and well, actually, before I say that, I will add that the BBC, when it was doing its live reporting, auto-corrected Nigel Farage to saying stamp duty, despite the fact that that's not what he said, and this was actually being broadcast. So this tells us several things. One, some speechwriter was rather harassed. Two, Nigel is not necessarily across the detail either. And three, the BBC has decided to cozy up to the party they probably think is going to form the next government.
Well, yes, they're getting threatened with their license fee, I suppose.
Well, that's the kind of journalism that we do. So we don't have a go at people for the sake of it. We don't. But at the same time, what we will do is keep an eye on the detail and notice things that most people don't notice as to what's going on there. So that's a bit of an introduction to us. We've also been, we've been responsible for breaking several stories that have ended up being exclusives. We are responsible for the dismissal of a shadow minister. We have reported on plans by the trade unions that ended up, because we reported on them and also passed them via channels to government, that ended up keeping the schools open in the summer of 2020. We reported on massive electoral malpractice in 2019 during the election that ended up being reported to the Electoral Commission. We've done basically quite a lot of stuff. But nobody really knows that we've done it. But still, that's not the point. That's enough about us.
I will. To be honest, I'll say on that point, that's part of the reason we started getting in contact, because it was you noticing me actually from my videos that I have the same kind of eye for detail and things like that.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I can generally recognise people who are of that caliber, and you certainly are.
Well,
So there we are.
there you go.
We also do broadcast appearances every so often,
Mm.
and it's my hope that Peter will join us there in that capacity at some point soon. So there we are.
Well, fingers crossed for that. Yeah, you might be seeing me on national TV. That'll be a step up for fans of my channel. I'll have to face reveal for about the third time on my channel. Because I've actually privated all videos where I did face reveal. I did one where I played piano and sang Rule Britannia in celebration of finally leaving the EU, but took that down.
You see right there, there's already I play the piano as well.
Oh yeah,
so
we have a lot in common.
There we are. You see, that's what we've done.
Yes, but well, I suppose we should get on track with what we were wanted to talk about today, which is the big one. Certainly at the moment, well, there's a few going on at the moment, really, which we're going to get into as well. But it's the Trump visit at the moment, which seems to be once again Trump being very, very happy to be in his, I guess, I say ancestral homeland, but he's actually Scottish rather than English. But it's all Great Britain to the Americans anyway, really. You've all got British accents, so. Yeah, I mean, he's enjoying himself. The journalists seem to be almost going easy on them, from what I can tell.
Yes, I thought that. I thought the press also went quite easy on them as well. There was with that, honestly. So my second language is Dutch, and in the Netherlands they refer to anyone on the British Isles as Engels, which I don't think needs any translation. And I have said to several people, yeah, don't go to Scotland and say that.
Well, yeah, it's like the Irish as well. If you call them British, they go spare. So
yeah, or the Welsh for that matter. But what the interesting takeaway from this seems to have been that the president was encouraging our prime minister to use military troops to stop illegal migration. Also highlighting times when they have done that in the US before. But it certainly seems to be a case of him, almost feeling like he maybe has to baby step Starmer through this. You get that sense?
Well, you kind of do have to baby step Starmer through that sense, because Starmer's whole mindset seems to be, what does international law say / what does British law say? And he seems to be almost not unaware you can change it, but a very light touch on wanting to change laws like that. Having said that, they are trying to pass they've put in the Hillsborough law now, which I don't want to sidetrack too much on that, but that seems to be a law that you can just put every previous government to the courts for. Because if you improperly use power, you can go to court. You can say that of every government, and they define it as, they improperly used in that law is defined as serious improper use. What does that mean?
Well, you're quite right that it's a deliberate fudge.
Yeah.
It's a deliberate fudge of both legalese and also political speak. It's designed to enable you to. This is the thing. It's designed to enable you to get away with pretty much whatever you like, while also appearing to be covering all of your bases, despite the fact that actually you're not. When you have these kinds of things going on, I'm going to segue here, but there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So, as viewers probably will not be aware, or listeners, I should say, I have a condition whereby I suffer from seizures. I'm going to have to hope I don't go into one while we're recording this podcast.
I can take it out anyway. Don't worry about
that. Now, so when they brought in the Equalities Act of 2010, which the Blairite, or technically Brownite government, rushed in under Harriet Harperson, as my mum likes to call her, in the early months of 2010, just before they left office. So they brought in this Equalities Act, and one of the things that results from that is that when you apply for a job, you can tick a box that says, I consider myself to suffer from a disability. Okay? Now, I have said this on the airwaves before. You can't actually legislate against discrimination, or rather you can, but that is all you can do. So you can say, okay, you're not allowed to discriminate against the disabled. At the end of the day, if an employer is that bigoted, they don't want to employ you because you're black or gay or you're disabled or a woman or whatever it is, well, they'll find a reason. You were just picked to the post by a slightly stronger candidate. That's what they'll do.
Yeah.
So, yes, you can legislate against discrimination, but if you think that means you stopped it, no, you haven't.
No.
Okay.
Well,
so this is all about lip service, right? And
right.
when we look at, what has been going on in the past week, and I think really various people paying lip service to various causes, it doesn't actually change anything, but the box that's being ticked here is yours.
Yeah.
Nobody else is. This is the government ticking its own boxes, and I think that's what we're seeing with the government at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and they're also paralysed, and they can't really. At least they're finally getting a box ticked. I'll put it that way, because they're paralysed on everything else from the looks of it. Well, apart from maybe assisted dying as well. But I mean, to me, the new legislation looked like it looks like the type of law that will come up again in future as a two-tier type thing, where it's never really applied to, say, Labour, but could be applied to Tories and possibly Reform, should we have the day where we get a Reform government. Fingers crossed for that, obviously. But yes, you have to guide Starmer as President Trump anyway. I don't know if Trump's necessarily worked out that Starmer's, from at least our perspective, is a bit of a robot.
Well, he had to deal with Theresa May, so he should have some experience by now. But I think what he thinks he's doing is trying to guide Starmer through having to do this, because I mean, what have we had today? I believe we've had the very first migrant sent back to France under the 1-in, 1-out scheme.
After failing for 2 days in a row, yes.
Yes.
We got one back. That's a great achievement for this government. And then obviously you've got Operation Restoring Justice from Reform that's promising 600,000 in 5 years. A rate of one a day does not make 600,000. I don't think I have to. I think everyone can do quick arithmetic like that. Yeah, I looked into a bit of the details of that as well, especially Max Tempers on Twitter. He's he looks into this stuff quite well, because he was saying obviously the human rights lawyers and activist groups, all that, they found out which planes the migrants were going to go on. Obviously, a load of last minute, stop the plane where this guy's actually human trafficked. They all went on about an Atrean man, which was really odd to me, because if you've had 2 days worth of people not being deported, how many people were actually on those planes? Because it can't just be one Atrean man they tried to get rid of twice. So I don't know why he's focused on, but he was saying he's been trafficked, despite the fact he's been screened and never mentioned that he was trafficked before. He lived in Ethiopia for 20 years after leaving Eritrea, stayed there, said he got abuse, and then hopped around Europe effectively. And I'm thinking, if you're abused in Ethiopia, why wouldn't you leave earlier? Would be my thought process. But either way, he got to stay. And so with this India man, I believe he's going over to France. Obviously, France is sending one back that's been vetted. But France, I believe, are planning to send him back to India, which then just begs the question, why couldn't we just deport him to India ourselves instead of still having one extra refugee that we don't necessarily want? I suppose at that point, the obvious, some refugees are welcome, but we obviously have far too many, and there's far too many illegals taking advantage, which is where the problem is.
What you have going on here is people going through systems and processes. And the thing is, you try and get rid of one, all you'll do is replace it with another, a bit like civil servants. And, well, it's true.
Yeah.
And with this, it really is more a case of passing the buck, as far as I can see. It's now someone else's problem that they've got to deal with. Now, France, of course, have been somewhat belligerent about trying to make these arrivals our problem. They've already been their problem, but now they can hand off their problem to our problem, and now it's our problem. So I suppose if we deported back to France and they deported back to India, well, it's almost tit for tat, really, in that sense, isn't it? That we're sort of saying, okay, well, now he's your problem. You're going to have to deal with getting rid of him. In terms of why we can't just do that, it's a complicated one, and it comes down to various metrics under international law as to where exactly you can send someone, especially if you're a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. So that then it.
Well, just to pull up on that, France are in the ECHR.
Yes, I know they do.
So they're deporting him to India. So yeah.
Well, again, you could even call this quite typical, really, of the sort of sibling rivalry that we have had with France for most of the past 1,000 years.
Oh, since time immemorial, yeah.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, they don't like us and we don't like them, but this is like having a big brother or a younger brother or whatever, or something like that, that you don't really get on with, but at the same time, at the end of the day, you'll be there for them just as we were for them in the last war.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We were there. It wasn't only us. It wasn't only us. It was the Americans as well. And people also forget the contribution that was made by the Indian Gurkhas, also by the Polish, and various other people who came over. I mean, a lot of the pilots in the Battle of Britain were Polish.
Oh yeah.
People forget about this, but what Britain has always been good at doing is cementing a community, an international community, and whether you call that the Commonwealth, Commonwealth or Commonwealth even, or the Empire, whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter. We've always been good at forging links. And why have we been good at that? Well, because we've been invaded that many times and we've been assimilated that many cultures. We certainly have. That we are naturally good at this. And most races in the world, I think, can't really. I say most races, most peoples in the world can't really claim that.
The old-fashioned version of races.
Well, I mean, even if you look at the US, they're an offshoot of us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There are brothers.
That's basically what they are.
Yeah.
I love to confuse Americans, by the way, by saying who won the War of Independence, and they will always say, "Well, the Americans did," and I say, "Well, no, the British did," because at that time, until the conclusion of War of Independence, there were no Americans.
Not true. No. Well, I think even at the time it was called the Civil War.
Well, the point being that at the time, what happened was the Britons fought the Britons, and the Britons won. What a surprise!
And then,
so it always confuses the hell out of them.
Then in 1912, the Britons won again, burned the White House down.
If you look at the other countries that we have, for want of a better word, ceded. Because you have the United States, you also have Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they? Those are the people we sent there during the era of transportation because we decided they committed some crime or other, which is probably quite minor. And if you look at what they've actually done in a totally non-native land, a totally alien land, well, they've built a fantastic civilization, and the same can be said of the United States, the world's biggest economy.
Yeah, I mean, not that I want to segue onto this topic necessarily, but I'm a fan of Kanzuk. I think we just need to sort out having a whole bunch of left wingers in charge of all these countries before we get there. But no, I'm a fan of Kanzuk. Obviously, the Anglosphere in general. It's a whole bunch of civilizations that are good, and maybe as well you could involve Nordic countries, Scandinavia, because they seem to have decent civilizations. Generally, certainly a very peaceful population. Maybe not with Sweden with the grenade attacks they've had over the past few years, but I think they'll be sorting that along with a lot of all the problems that the other countries have had. Every country has a problem with violence at this point, worse than 5-10 years ago, I'd say.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at again. We stick with the topic of input into our country. I mean, the Danes, the Vikings in general. We are peoples who have known each other and been around each other for a long time.
Yeah.
And however we've chosen to do it, we've managed to live together, to coexist, and actually to integrate with one another in whatever way. There are also other peoples who, I mean, here's a fun fact about the Dutch. Okay, here's a fun fact. There's a verse in the Dutch national anthem that translates roughly to the King of Spain I've sworn a lifelong loyalty.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which is because the Spanish used to rule the Dutch, right?
Yeah.
And it's still preserved there, just in the same way that in the sixth verse that we don't tend to sing now of the British national anthem. Yeah, you have you know what I'm going to say, don't you? You have.
I'll give you the honour.
Rebellious Scots to crush, that one. Yeah, we don't tend to talk about that now.
It's my favourite verse.
They're all historical artifacts that demonstrate that different peoples have lived around each other in whatever capacity, whether they were coexisting, whether they were conquering each other, whether they were doing whatever it is that they were doing. This has gone on for thousands of years. So there is no point in the kinds of people who say, oh yes, no, well, you're of one nationality or another, you cannot become of another. I can think of somebody who I won't name in this podcast. Actually, he's Polish. He came over here when he was 8. Do you know what you hear in his accent?
Oh, I'd imagine proper English. I don't know where exactly he's from, but wherever he's from, or wherever he's lived, dialect. Stoke. There you go. Yeah.
Now, this is no surprise because when the Polish, the pirates and sorry, not the pirates, the pilots and the and the other people who came to assist during the Second World War, that where they ended up subsisting was around Stoke. Now, where I'm from, in Cheshire, was basically the overspill for that. So there's a large Polish diaspora here as well. And this is the result of people who came to assist Britain in its time of need.
Yeah.
So when people say, now, honestly, there are people you talked about on your channel before who I think perhaps have a different notion, a bit of a different notion, as to whether or not you can become British. Well, I mean, I look at someone like that and I just think he just breaks that mold completely, because he is. But he can be both Polish and English at the same time. And that does not mean that he is less of either.
Yeah, I can see why you'd say he's not less of either. This is the thing. Everyone then, well, not everyone. People of this persuasion of you can definitely only be one nationality, and if you're of two, you should be to the one where your ancestry is from, whatever. I just then think of someone like Disraeli's an example I always bring up. He is the pinnacle of British statesmanship. And he was from Italy, but I think he was a Sephardic Jew. He didn't actually have kids, but he did marry an English woman. He changed his name from Disraeli with a little accent between D and Israeli to just Disraeli. Baptized Anglican because I think his dad had a disagreement with the synagogue they went to, so converted to Christianity. And got to these people, is getting the Suez Canal a British achievement? Or is it not, because Disraeli got it on behalf of the British state? He also got Queen Victoria her title of Empress of India, and that was all because there was a bit of a scandal, because I think one of her daughters was marrying a German king, and she'd be not empress, but a title above queen. So she wanted to be empress to make sure she's head of the family and has the highest ranking title there. And yeah, even the anecdote you have, there'll be pretty much everyone in 2025 will know someone that they consider fully integrated, even though they're part of a diaspora. And even skin colour doesn't really come into it much. And then you talk about deporting these people. I mean, honestly, who wants to deport Marcus Rashford? Crazy people, and that's pretty much it. But then obviously, because I cover a lot of Vox Pops for people who don't know, especially the Politics Joe ones, and whenever they're talking to people that say that Tommy March the other day, which is another thing we kind of bring up, or even any, like the Epping protests and things like that, microphone in their face, and they just say, I want illegals gone, I want criminals gone. People do differentiate between legal and illegal. Skin colour doesn't even come into it, because most people in Britain, frankly, are not racists.
No, of course they're not. But this is the other thing. I mean, I think for me, the distinction is saying, look, if you come into this country illegally, what you've shown already, what you demonstrated, is that, I mean, you already don't have any respect for our laws, and that was just to get here.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do when you do get here? You know, well, quite frankly, what is there any reason for us to trust you? Or there isn't. And there's a lot of people who don't really seem to understand that is a distinction. It's sort of like, you know, you're not supposed to be here, so why are you here? And now that you are here, well, if you didn't care about breaking the law to get into this country, what will you do when you are here? And why should anyone take a particularly favorable opinion of you? If you were in a safe country before, which you were, you know, and now you're here, what are people supposed to think about what you're going to do when you do get here? So it's a reasonable question for people to have, and we should note that there are, you know, there have been protests in regions covered by various different local authorities around the country as to why this hotel has opened up, why it's been repurposed. What I want to know, quite frankly, because this doesn't seem to be discussed in mainstream media, is what happens when a premises that already existed is now being repurposed for this purpose. I mean, what do the owners get? Do they get a buy-off? You know, do they get compensation? You know, I don't know how that works. Do you know how that works?
I think they're basically subcontracted by the government. There was a guy on TikTok who's got a big portfolio of a load of HMOs and things like that, but he also owns hotels. And he basically said, I was offered this much money by the government to house people in hotels. And I don't think it was that much higher than market rate. I think why hotel owners go for it is because you're guaranteed the money, whereas obviously if it's to tourism, it's seasonal anyway. And he said, obviously, I didn't do it because I care about the country more, and I don't want these people, and the locals won't want the people housed here, which is true in absolutely every respect. And it's about the only type of NIMBYism that I can deal with. And I mean, that was the interesting thing with Epping. That hotel was being put under the injunction that's obviously been overturned now, based on a NIMBY law of planning didn't allow it. But then it was overturned, so now they're staying in there until it can be overturned again, because I think they're still looking into whether the planning can be actually passed through or not, which obviously the Home Office are going to push. And while all that's happening, they're celebrating one man being deported. And I was going to say as well, actually, before you mentioned they come from a safe country, well, the Eritrean man, they were saying he'd be destitute over in France. So if you can't even deport someone to France, he's got 14 days for this to go through. If that actually goes through, we've basically got open borders on the channel. You can't deport them to France. You can't deport them anywhere. France isn't necessarily the safest in the world, but it is one of the safest, and it's certainly, if the bar's not below France, it's impossible. So yeah, this is still causing all sorts of anxiety with everyone in Britain from the looks of it, and everyone wants the illegals. Well, not everyone. There's crazy people who don't, obviously, but most people clearly want the illegals gone, and nobody's impressed with one person being deported just to get one back anyway.
Well, no, but it's very typical of the sort of legalist, if that's what you want to call it, mentality that people like Starmer have. Is this kind of, hey, look at us, here's a success. See, we can do it. Yes, you can once. But the reality is, I mean, I will admit, you know, there are people on that side of the movement who, when you get through it all, really, what's underneath, you know, can all the foreigners just start off now, please? Is basically their argument, and it's their underlying philosophy. And I think really what we need to do is move a bit beyond that and start looking at how we, in practice, deal with this situation. Now, the traditional example that is called for is the Australian one, where they just towed boats back. But what it's worth saying is that distance was very significantly higher, which in principle for us should make it easier.
But it also makes it easier for them to try again.
Yes, it does. And I mean, even the BBC has reported on people who have not made a successful crossing, saying we will keep trying and keep trying and keep trying to get to Britain. Because, in fact, I remember this from about don't ask me, about 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. It was footage, actually. In fact, it was on the BBC. It was footage of people saying, and I'll try not to ape any accents in particular, but if you go to England, they will give you a house.
Yeah. Oh,
that kind of thing. You know, and the thing is, this footage is out there. You know, people know about this. They're coming because they want what we've got. Meanwhile, we are not even able to affordably house our own next generation.
Oh yeah. So it's I mean, because I'm sort of a Zoomer, sort of a millennial. I'm that weird age bracket where I'm in between. Everyone calls me a millennial though, so that lets you know which side of the bracket that's on. I do monitor my TikTok, which I never used to, but my girlfriend loves it and sent me TikTok, so I downloaded it and I got addicted to it. But yeah, every now and then you'll see these adverts of, you know, people traffickers saying, come over, it costs 1,500 whatever to cross the channel. There's a good chance you won't be deported. You get, you know, your food, board, whatever done for you. Worst case scenario, you end up on the Bibby Stockholm when that was going, and even that was basically a Premier Inn, though everyone said it was basically a concentration camp, which obviously it wasn't, because we saw pictures inside. There was a pool table, games room. You know, it was good enough for people who worked on oil rigs. It's going to be good enough for people who've come here illegally and should not be here, obviously.
Well, it's interesting actually, because you say that this person was said, "Oh, I'll be destitute," and it's like, well, given what you will have had to pay to get here to begin with, if you're destitute, that's why you're destitute.
Yeah, well, I've told people this before. How the way human rights lawyers seem to work is, they'll throw out about 20 different defences and hope one sticks. The famous one I always remember that everyone cites is that chicken nuggets one, and nobody seems to ever mention that the chicken nuggets thing was actually rejected. And it's
just... This is an audio recording where I can see you. Please put your arm down. That does not look very good.
Well, it's audio, isn't it? But for those listening, it looks like I'm doing a Musk salute.
But anyway, never mind that. But
yeah, but as I was saying though, the chicken nuggets thing, that's not what actually went through. What kept him here was just that his son was here. The fact that he didn't like chicken nuggets, that was actually just rejected. It's just, well, your son's staying here anyway, so you should stay here, so he has a right to a family. So
well, family reunification, I mean, look, if I were interpreting that law, what I would say is, well, why don't you both go then?
Well, I think I can't remember the American that said it, but he was asked, what are you going to do if there's like family here? And he says, well, you can just deport whole families.
Yes, yeah, that's kind of what I'm Now, because I remember interviewing Nigel Farage about this. I asked him what he would do on day one when he became Prime Minister, because if you think about it, now Sir Keir Starmer, you know, this is one of the things he said that he actually stuck to, which is that we will abandon the Rwanda quote unquote deterrent thing on day one, and in fairness, they did.
Yeah. Big mistake.
So, in the context of that, I asked Mr. Farage what he would do as Prime Minister on day one. And he said, begin repealing the Human Rights Act of 1998.
Damn.
This is an interesting one because there's actually a whole framework of legislation that needs to be got rid of.
Yeah.
And you've got the Equalities Act, you've got the ECHR, all of that. But I found it interesting that was what he said when asked the direct question, was HRA 1998, get rid of that.
Yeah.
He was also, I will say, careful to say begin the process of doing that. So
I was going to say that doesn't sound like something you can do on day one.
No, of course not. And I was being a typical journalist and asking him that question in that way, but that was what he said. So I found it interesting that's his answer is so that's number one. That's number one. And of course, they've already got their program, which originally I have to say was a David Cameron idea of the British Bill of Rights, right? So they've got that going on. Well, they haven't yet, but they want to. But so it's just an interesting soundbite that to hear that is his number one, because really it could have been any of them, but that is his number one.
As you say, it's got a whole legal framework around it. The Human Rights Act really is the core, and it's something that I've been quite skeptical. Well, not skeptical. I wanted to get rid of it as well for years. And it's a point that has been brought up to me before by people who know better about these things. But yeah, the Equalities Act depends on it. You've got all these laws that depend on it. And so I think eventually, Zia Yusuf's talked about this as well, I think that there probably are going to have a Great Repeal Act, which we have had before. And you can probably get in the process of that day one with very good planning, which, they either have 1 year to plan, or much more likely, they've got nearly 4 years to plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, 1832, maybe even 1834. I can't remember which one it is now when we had a Great Repeal of existing.
David Starkey loves to mention it all the time as well. It's his pet project.
Well, this is the thing. The thing with Starmer is I don't think he ever actually expected to become Prime Minister, if I'm being honest. I think when he was elected to office, he was expected to be a bit like a William Hague figure, if you look at the other side of the coin, or in Duncan Smith figure, who was supposed to be an interim leader. And now he's Prime Minister.
Yeah, do you know why he became an MP?
No.
He was asked by Ed Miliband to become an MP so that he could get a fast track to Attorney General, because obviously of his past in the CPS, head of CPS, and head of prosecutions or whatever it was. So he was supposed to be there really as the government's lawyer, and there's basically no one else with talent in the Labour Party, more or less. So he was the only one who really didn't embarrass himself on camera too often. So,
well, and he was the chief of prosecutions, and indeed, my mother, who's been a clinical psychologist for about 40 years now, she worked alongside Starmer in family law cases. Now, what's supposed to happen there is the whole team comes together. It's what you call a team around the child. This is usually when you have parents fighting over the kids.
Yeah.
This is usually when that's going on. And what she said about him, as long as I keep everything anonymous here, what she said about him, this is during the Labour leadership election, and there were still, I think, the three of them left. It was him, Lisa Nandy, and Rebecca Long Bailey, I believe.
Yeah, I think she lost.
She said of him, around him, nothing happens. He's got no ideas. He's a very good prosecutor, but he doesn't actually come up with any solutions. And I think when I look at it now, this is 5 years ago.
Yeah.
He hadn't even been elected leader yet. And when I look at it now, well, I think she was right. Yeah. To be honest, how often does a young bloke say his mum was right? But there we are. No. I am saying that.
I just want to jump in on that, and my mum might listen to this, and I just want to say, yes, Mum, you're right quite a lot of the time, just so you know.
Well, there we are. We just don't admit it at the time, do we? But no, I mean, I said to her the other day, this is going off topic, so we'll keep it brief. I mean, because I've got an appointment, I have a condition that causes me to suffer from seizures, as I've said, and I have an appointment for neurology where that would be at Royal Stoke. And I said, well, I can drive, Mum. And she said, no, you're not doing that. Yep.
Yeah, fair, yeah.
And she's 80 now. She can't.
Yeah.
She just can't go that far. It's not even a case of her driving. She just can't, she's practically housebound. And she said, look, I worked for them or with them for years and years and years, and they do have a facility to have that transferred to Leighton Hospital, which is in Crewe. Now that I can drive, that's 10 minutes. I can do that. And I didn't believe her. And then I rang them up and said, look, can we move this to late? And then they said, oh, yeah, we can. It's only a week later. So when I was on the phone to the other day, I said, Mum, turns out you were right.
They love hearing that as well. They love hearing that.
Well, these are the real stories, right?
Yeah.
When we talk to people, I think there are a lot of podcasters out there who you wouldn't believe was anything other than AI generated these days. But these are real stories from real people, and that's what we intend to convey.
Well, exactly. Well, yeah, we've got a Down the Pub vibe, hence this is hopefully going out at a weekend. Yeah, but I mean, on top of all that, while we're talking about, I mean, actually, that's an interesting point about Starmer. How you say he's very not unconventional. What's the word I'm looking for? But he's not controversial at all. And whenever he's asked about his personal life, he just doesn't have answers. He doesn't even dream. What's your favourite book? Don't really read. Okay.
I mean, so what's interesting there is, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna have to segue this one.
It's all right.
I think there have been. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn kept his wife out of public life when he was Labour leader, which I think was. I don't often say this, but I think was the right decision by Corbyn to do that. There have been other people, other prime ministers whose spouses, have just sort of stepped aside and stayed where they are, which I think is the right thing to do. I mean, if you look at now, well, here's one example. I remember Theresa May, I think it's fair to say, disaster of early 2019. She was trying to get those meaningful votes through, which everyone, excuse me, obviously in journalistic terms, described as meaningless votes, because that's exactly what they were. But her husband, Philip May, turned up in the Commons gallery.
Right.
He did. I think just to support her going through that. And of course, it never worked, but that's, and the media, the mainstream media, some of them were really quite scathing about this. And I've been subsequently scathing about that because all I will say to you,
go on,
Peter, is what manner of country are we living in when the husband cannot support his wife? Without having that dragged through the mud as well.
Yeah.
I completely disapproved of the way that some of them covered that. She needs him there to.
No. The media went mad in 2019, so I don't remember them going on about that, but I can imagine them doing it. But also, I'm thinking back to reading Margaret Thatcher's biography by I can't remember if he's a sir actually, by Charles Moore, and it's quite funny hearing about her on leadership bids and what have you, and doing the campaigning because Dennis was always there. And there's even points where he'd basically say, right, you've been on stage for too long, time for bed, woman. And just say that input. Like, apparently that was quite common. And the media didn't really have a go at her for that. They were just calling her a milk snatcher, even though she was just expanding Labour policy.
Times have changed, haven't they? And I think it's good. I mean, that was what, 40 years ago. It's time to. It's time for us to reflect, I think, on what the role of a political spouse is, and what we can say offset here is that, his wife's likely, stayed out the picture. That's good. That's what's supposed to be the case.
Yeah.
But I think we got onto this because, has he got any ideas? No, the thing is, when Rishi Sunak called that election, now we have to remember this is a man who was just as comfortable being, a big tech entrepreneur in California as being the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He has strong US links. I think when he called that election on that date, especially given that it was, messing it down, shall we say, with rain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the ideal time to call that announcement, is it?
No.
But why did he do it? Because when doing it on that date, it would mean it would coincide with the 4th of July, which, of course, in the US is Independence Day. And I think for him, he'd already worked out his goose was cooked.
Yeah.
And for him, I think that was his Independence Day from this goddamn job.
I've actually got I made a whole video on an alternative theory as to why he actually announced it on that day. Do you remember the whole Afghan scandal where it's turned out that
which one?
Well, quite. They secretly brought over 100,000 or so Afghan refugees and their family and hid it from everyone. You know how there was a court injunction, super injunction, to keep that quiet?
Yeah.
That was due to be overturned, I think, just after the election date then, and they only found out about it. That it was either the same day or the day before they found out. And I did a whole video and a whole timeline on it, so it was even shared by, I think it's Andre Walker of Talk TV, even he found the video. So, because of that, I think... Thank you. I think he panicked, Rishi and the team did, because even the cabinet didn't know about this. They didn't know the snap election was being called, to try and get the Tories effectively to basically save seats for the Tory party. Because if that Afghan scandal did come out, luckily they managed to get the super injunction pushed back till, whenever it came out this year. But they didn't know that at the time, so we just went, right, got to have a snap election. They'll find out about that after. At least we'll have the seats. And then obviously I don't think the Rwanda plan was actually going to work out properly either, because I don't think they were going to win those court cases either. So that's been my theory that I've been quite convinced by, not just because I, with help of other people I know, put that timeline together. So I it could be a mixture of all these things, because Starmer can't be happy in the position either. Everyone says it. So
they do. I mean, but see, this is why. And if we're being honest, and I hope you agree with me on this one, this is why we're doing this podcast. This is why we have. This is why you have your channel. This is why I have my platform. Is that we do offer different theories, independent theories. We don't profess to know everything, but we, but what we can do is do a bit of independent thinking, shall we say, as to why things are going on that might be going on. I'm going to, at this point, if you don't mind, Peter, I'm going to just talk a little bit about Wolves, about what we do.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we are an independent political news, comment, and analysis platform. Do you know, analysis is the most tricky category? It really is. Now, news, you can only report the facts. Opinion, you can say what you like. Analysis is about saying, why do we think what has happened has happened? So it is our opinion as to why what has happened. But what we're not going to do is tell you how to think about it. Or rather, we're not going to tell you what to think about it.
Yeah.
It's quite a tricky one. And when we do podcasts like this, I mean, in fact, really, to me, it is the same category. Yes, you will get opinions out of it, but really, we're not here to tell you what to think. We're telling you how. We're here to help you with how to think. We have also... I go on the television quite regularly for media commentary, and I was on the radio last week, actually, owing to the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, which we should come on to in just a moment. But there are people who've written for us who've actually now gone on to work for The Times. Sorry, not The Times.
No.
Get it right, not The Times. The Express, The Sun, even think tanks like the TPA, that sort of thing. And they've done that by using their Wolves portfolio to demonstrate their journalistic capacity. So that's us, and we're quite happy for new writers. In fact, we would very much enjoy them, and perhaps one day they will join us as well. But there we are. So that's a bit about us. But shall we now move to? I would say, actually, before we do that.
Yeah.
We've been responsible for the removal of a shadow minister.
Yeah, you can show that off.
Well, we've been responsible for keeping the schools open in the summer of 2020, exposing Lord's plans with the trade unions. Got rid of that. We've been responsible for exposing the fact that the Cabinet Office was talking to Black Lives Matter. We've exposed the British Polling Council, branding the entire, a quarter of the British electorate as far right. That's a complex story, and I would need to get into that in more detail. We don't have the time. What we also nip at the heels, though. I mean, we're kind of Reform UK friendly, but at the same time, when they put out that 12-page Britannia cards thing, which is basically we miss our rich friends and their dinner parties.
Right.
We pointed out that they didn't mention the self-employed at all
when it came to giving the money to minimum wage employed people.
It was clearly an OS moment when we talked to them about that. So, look, we are impartial. We will just deal with whatever is going on.
Yeah, sure.
But we are looking for young aspiring journalists and indeed older aspiring journalists. One of my most regular contributors, he's 73.
Oh, there you go.
We've got 21-year-olds, we've got 73-year-olds. We don't care. We're not interested. So we value the experience. We also value the youth and ambition and all that kind of stuff. So that is a bit about us. But as I said, sorry, we should now come to the topic of Charlie Kirk.
Yes, not got too long left, but yeah, definitely with Charlie Kirk. Because I'll say from my perspective, he's a bit past my time. I'll put it that way, because I got into the whole debate me bro side of things, which Charlie Kirk, obviously, that was his bread and butter. That's what he was well known for. But I only really saw that from Ben Shapiro, and I knew of Charlie Kirk being the future of that, really. And obviously, I watched a bit of I watched clips of him at the Oxford Union, and it's like, yeah, he's owning idiot leftists, the type of people that are going to want to talk to him there. It's a bit like a Jubilee video where it's 20 leftist versus conservative. But it's quite embarrassing that from the Oxford Union. But, he held his own there, which you'd expect, given he's done that for 10 years. And then I unfortunately, I think I was playing games on one monitor and had Twitter open on another. And unfortunately, it just floods with the images and videos. And it was basically unavoidable. Well, it was avoidable. I could have turned off Twitter, but it's hard to do that, really, especially when you like us and you want to keep up to date with these things. And it was a really, really sad passing. It really, really tragic. I believe you actually have met him before as well.
Yes, I have. I wouldn't say he and I knew each other well, but we were friends. I met him 6 years ago at a dinner. And as I said on both, I think, of the couple of media appearances that I've done on this, what has happened here is that a man has lost his life, a wife has lost her husband, and 2 children will now grow up without a father. Now, another friend of mine is another wolf. That's the good thing about wolves. You get a singular demonym. Everyone is a wolf. But another wolf said to me, he should get the Medal of Honor.
Oh.
And I thought, well, it's interesting because they don't have the honor system that we have. The knighthoods and peerages. They don't do that, no. But they do have various medals, just as we have. And my friend said to me, you should get the Medal of Honor. And I said to him, bearing in mind, I've been roped in very quickly to act as a spokesman. I haven't actually done much. I used to work for Turning Point. I was on a retainer for them for a couple of years. But I haven't been roped in until quite recently, and suddenly I had to be a spokesman. I don't resent it. I was doing my best by Charlie, right? That is the thing to bear in mind. I was doing my best by Charlie as much as I could.
Yeah. No.
He said he should get the Medal of Honor, and I said he should probably get the medal for getting shot for what you believe in.
Well, if that's the Medal of Honor, fair enough. I don't know how the American honor medal system, I should say, works, but
I should say my language was emotive.
Yes, I can imagine. It's just a crazy thing. The only way I can describe him to people is he was just a guy who wanted to talk. And yes, he was right-wing and an evangelical Christian American. He might have even been a young Earth creationist. I don't really care. He was a man who all he advocated was talk through the problems, have open discussion, and a lunatic with possibly a little bit of a terrorist cell. I believe they're going after Antifa now. Yeah, murdered him in cold blood. What else can it be? Shot in a cowardly way as well, 130 meters away. Wouldn't have even seen his eyes. Yeah.
I did say this live that we are clear in our use of language. He was murdered.
Yeah.
He was assassinated. Okay. The reason I drew that distinction was because I recall that 9 years ago, the BBC, and I'm not blaming the BBC, they have their own editorial guidance to follow, kept referring to the killed MP, Joe Cox. Okay. And I mean, also at a personal level, I kind of objected to this. I understand why they did it, because there hadn't been a trial yet.
Yeah.
So from their editorial perspective, you couldn't use the word murdered. But let us be clear, she was murdered.
Yep.
Charlie Kirk was also murdered. And I'm sorry, I'm slightly emotional, but
no, it's understandable.
We are clear. We are clear at Turning Point that actually, I'm not really in the fold at the moment. I won't go back to it now. I need some more people. But we are clear. He was murdered. And that's something that we need to emphasize when we talk about this. There will, by the way, be a vigil on September the 21st. Or actually, there was a vigil on the 12th. There will now be a rally, I believe, on this 21st.
Okay.
In London, if people want to come, if they want to look at the website, they can find that detail. So that is there. But yes, he was a friend, and he was murdered.
It's a tragedy, and I mean, obviously, I didn't know him at all. I never met him, so there's no way I can have the same emotional response. But it makes sense, and there's plenty of people who've had an emotional response. And just to touch upon it at the end here as well, it's important to remember that, because there's still a lot of people dehumanizing him. I've seen clips I've seen memorials of his destroyed by lunatics yet again, and political polarization, obviously, that's what this all comes down to. It seems to me much worse in America, at least, but over here, it's not too much better, but not
well, it's not. When you think about it, obviously we had Joe Cox.
Yeah.
We also had Sir David Amos. He deserves a mention.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Again, brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And when we find that people who are unable to agree with each other think that the best idea is to just kill them, well, I think we're ranging into mental illness at this point. And the thing to say about Charlie is that, why did he found Turning Point in 2012 over in the USA to begin with? Because he believed that wars should be won with words and not weapons. And then what is the irony? A weapon used to kill him, to murder him. And there we are. So these people, all of them, I imagine Joe Cox and Sir David Amos will have had rather different politics, but being in two different parties. But we need to stop this, man. We need to stop this.
I do agree. I mean, I'm nearly 30. I'll put it that way. When I've been politically aware, which really my big entry into politics was learning about Brexit, I've kind of only know ridiculously polarized politics. And the thing is, I always thought there's no way that could have been true in the past, but then you read Margaret Thatcher's biography and it's like, no, kind of. It always was like that. They got bombed in Brighton, for instance, and that was with the Irish. It's certainly something that's got to be cooled down. I think it's unrealistic to say it's gone forever, because one, you're always going to have lunatics. Two, you're always going to have ideologies that find it acceptable to kill. And just to touch on this, because we don't have long left, but also the reason I think America's worse is because they frankly have people who will have inspired this kid who are just on Twitch. I don't know if you'll know the names, but Hassan Piker, Vorsh, they're a couple of big... They call themselves, I don't even think they call themselves this, actually, but they are socialist, communist, really, channels. And Hassan Piker has an awful lot of clips of him, saying America deserved 9/11, kill people in Minecraft, lol. And it's definitely radicalised people. And over here as well, as I keep having to tell people, you've not got this Zoomer right-wing vanguard. 10% of Zoomers vote reform. Everyone else votes a left-wing party. And barely any of them vote. The rest of them are just normal people that don't care. But that's the problem. The people who are into politics largely are left-wing, and largely that, not to say the right wing doesn't dehumanize people, but it's definitely a one-sided issue in terms of 80% of the problem is that side. I see it on our side, no doubt, but nowhere near as much and nowhere near as justified. I can't imagine someone on the left being murdered like Charlie Kirk was, and the right. I reckon the right would ignore it rather than celebrate it, is the way I'd put it.
Well, what I will say as we wrap up now is that politics is basically the human condition on steroids. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's what it is. It's not it's not something that actually deviates from normal levels of humanity. It's more the fact that you have fewer limitations on the things that you can do, when you have that level of reach, when you can reach that many people. Plus, you have to kind of think about the kinds of people that politics attracts. That's not to say everybody.
Yeah.
But typically it's going to be the power hungry.
Yeah.
You do get some better ones. I mean, the MP for my constituency for many years was Gwyneth Dunwoody. She was Labour. Mm-hmm. And she was widely recognised as being, whatever you thought of her party, including during the Blair years, she was there until 2008 or something like that. She was a very good MP, and she listened. This is also one of the reasons why I oppose sort of alternative vote or proportional representation.
Keep FTP, yeah.
Because how on earth are you going to tie an MP to their constituency just as they should be? But she was a very good MP. But certainly politics does attract people of a certain nature, and I think we can go into this on the next episode.
Yes.
But what I will say is, I will shut up in a second. Honestly, I will.
It's all right.
That the analogy I've used before is that it's like a black hole. A black hole has a very strong center of gravity, obviously, and when you fall into a black hole from an observer's point of view, you change, your image changes. You never finally see them as they actually cross the event horizon, but that's what politics is like. And what I would say is, the closer and closer they get to the center of power, the less and less they look like the person you knew.
Well, I imagine politics affects people like that the most. I mean, I know, I do have a friend who, I won't go too much into detail. I know people who, are very fake to begin with. They haven't necessarily gone into politics, but they've gone into certain crowds, we'll say, and it's become quite clear that they'd rather have that fake persona than be the one that you necessarily knew in the past.
Well, the thing is, you learn how to play the game.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Westminster is no better than Hollywood in that sense, and in another sense also that, basically if you're fit, you'll get somewhere.
Well, well, quite, but
seriously, you don't even have to be that talented.
No, my channel has gone thermonuclear on untalented people. So, but I think I'll leave that comment there, and I think we will wrap it up there. So, as mentioned, everyone, link to Wolves of Westminster, their website with all their articles is linked down below, and I suppose with that we'll say goodbye. So thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Let's speak again.
Right, until we speak again. Right, with that, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.